Hi, it's Karen. Thanks so much for joining me again today. I am making a card with a floral bouquet on it, and I'm also using a stencil to create a stenciled background. Now, just say up front, if you can hear a humming noise in the background, I'm in my craft room. It's freezing cold here in New Zealand, and I've got my little fan heater going so I don't freeze my toes off. So I took the English brick wall stencil from My Favourite Things, and I am using some Distress Grit paste, which is the first time I've used it, and applied that to a white card panel, but I haven't taken the paste right out to the edges, so I wanted a sort of an unfinished look, and once that was finished I set it aside to dry. This is the new Painted Prints stamp set from My Favourite Things, which was their latest card kit. Absolutely gorgeous, love it. So I am using acrylic blocks to stamp this. I can't be bothered with the MISTI when there's a whole heap of images, and it's pretty easy to line up these layering stamps, so I'm just using acrylic blocks, and I'm also using Altenew inks because I have them in a range of colours and different shades of each colour. So I don't show you how I stamp all of the images, but I just stamped a whole heap of images in various colours so that I could then have a good choice when I went to put my bouquets together. So this is the tulips, and stamping that with a light pink for the base and then a darker pink on top. Excuse my head, have to get over top of it to line that up. But really easy to line up, and if you're not sure what stamps go with what, it's marked on the pack. And also I did, as you saw earlier, I downloaded from the website the guide that My Favourite Things have on their website, which helps to show where each image should be stamped, because some of them aren't totally obvious. So there's a couple of sheets done. I'm just finishing off with some foliage, and I used a couple of different greens for the foliage to add a bit of interest. Just finishing off that last group of leaves now, putting the top layer on, and then I will die cut all of those images out and then spend a ridiculous amount of time arranging them all, which I do not subject you to, so you can thank me later. Right, so there's all the stamped and die cut images. I am going to put them to one side for a minute while I stamp my sentiment. Now this is the Loads of Wishes stamp set from Avery Elle, and they have a scripty sentiment and then a, what do you call it, sort of like a negative sentiment in a frame, all as one stamp. Now I didn't want that all to stamp the same, so I took my scissors to the congratulations stamp and I snipped off the frame part at the bottom. It's a really tight fit. I did actually nick into the bottom stamp a tiny bit, but I fixed that later, so it's not the end of the world. So I'm stamping the congratulations stamp in Versamark ink onto some black cardstock, and then I'm using some Brutus Monroe embossing powder, which I'd heard great things about. Really fine embossing powder. It gives a lovely finish, but I do find there's lots of little flecks that even despite using the embossing pad, I have to flip these little flecks off. So I use a metal needle tool for that. I find that easier to use than a paintbrush, and I just flick each one off, and then what you can't see is I'm actually blowing on it to blow the little flecks away. So once I've finished all of that, I will then heat it with my heat tool to melt that powder. And it does heat pretty quickly and it does melt beautifully, so I'm quite pleased with it. So get the old heat tool out, check that it's hot enough, and then melt that powder. The good thing about the glass media mat is that you can put heat on it. Prior to that I had one of the cutting mats, and of course you can't heat that or they warp, so it's I mean, I really am enjoying my glass media mat. So where I don't get all the little white flecks, I'm taking a Copic multi-liner pen and just colouring them in, and you can't actually see where they've been. So it's my little trick for covering up white flecks when you get them where you don't want them. The rest, you can see I just used a scrap of card there to stamp the rest of the sentiment on. I'm just cutting that out with my scissors, and it's really hard to see in the video, but it's right at the top of that sentiment is where I accidentally snipped it when I was separating the stamp. So I'm just again taking that black multi-liner and just filling in that line to straighten it up a bit, and you'd never know that I'd got a bit too happy with my scissors when I was separating those. Just finishing off trimming around that sentiment, and now it's time to actually try and put all the elements together. So that's how I want my sentiment to look, and I want a bouquet above and below that sentiment, and it's actually the layout is the current sketch at Freshly Made Sketches, which has an element to the top right and an element to the bottom left of a horizontal sentiment. So it's actually a really cool sketch, and I thought that flowers would make a nice card using that sketch. So I'm just positioning all the different pieces that I want to use, and once I'm happy with the position of everything, I'll get some press and seal and hold that all in place. Now I actually have press and seal, I have little squares cut, and I just reuse that stuff until it starts getting a bit ratty looking, and then I'll just throw it away and get another piece. So it's actually really good value for money. And when I'm not using the pieces, I just stick them onto the outside of the box and they just hold there nicely. So I'll leave you with a bit of music while I put the rest of the card together. It's pretty simple from here on in. And I'd just like to thank you again for popping by and watching the video, and I will catch you next time. Bye.